All right. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to IT Mod Week. This is day 3 for VetSec, and we're hosting a military transition panel today. I've got 5 members of the VetSec team here, and we're just going to talk about their stories, how they got out of the military and into cybersecurity, and any military transition lessons learned. And as always, if anybody has any questions, please throw them in the comments, and we'll go around the room and ask and answer and just share stories. So with that said, I'll go ahead and bring everybody in. So thanks everybody for coming, and please, whoever would like to go first, I'm looking for as much of an interactive discussion as how you guys made it through and into cybersecurity and what would you do differently, and anything you'd like to share, go ahead.
Thanks, Tom. I'll go first if no one has a opposition to that. I do want to start a little bit further back. I know this is supposed to be about our military transition, but I had a very kind of windy road to get where I am today. So I want to go back a little bit further than just my military service. I've been doing tech since I was a kid. I was always the nerd, self-taught programmer. I picked up Logo in like first grade. I started learning BASIC on the Atari 800 computer system when I was 9 years old. Teaching myself C at 12. I spent most of my high school years playing video games and hacking all my save game files to give myself extra stuff, learning things like hexadecimal and how to find certain offsets in the files and all that kind of stuff. Got into college and went from a theology major to a management information systems to linguistics to comp sci, and finally into cyber over a span of 20 years from when I took my first semester as an undergrad to when I finally got that degree. In between, I had a lot of life events. I worked at a little mom and pop hardware store doing repairs, doing installs of Windows and DOS and things like that. I did some software. I did networking. I worked in accounting. I had a consultancy of my own at one point. Did a lot of volunteering for my church and for a mission agency I was at. And then finally ended up as an old man in the USMC. I actually had to get an age waiver to get in. I know I got a baby face. You can't tell, but I'm in my 40s. And I was really privileged to serve 5 years active duty and then a year in the reserves at Fort Meade after that, and doing signals intelligence. Fantastic field. I learned a lot there. I was also able to leverage a lot of my tech background doing the work that I did in the Marine Corps, even writing some programs and some scripts to automate some of the stuff while we were deployed overseas. So it was really, really great to do that. After a couple of years doing the SIGINT, I had the opportunity to do some digital network intelligence as well. So I did kind of the signals side. I guess I should say the what you traditionally think of signals, and then what the more modern signals being over the wire into the internet. After I got out, I got out in 2012, and I had some savings, had some plans on what I wanted to do. I had a family business that was starting to struggle. I grew up in a family business, and my mom was working it alone at this point in time. I thought that I was going to get out and I was going to help her with the business and try and keep that going. That didn't work out. I also tried a real estate investment company. That also didn't work out. I ended up after a few years being $120,000 in debt for the 2 failed businesses. It was a kind of a rough spot. I ended up going back to school. As I mentioned, it took me 20 years to finish my undergraduate degree. I used the GI Bill, went back to school, was trying to survive on the BAH, newly married at the time as well. So trying to take care of my wife and my stepkids and everything, basically on the BAH. It was rough. It was really rough, but I finished my degree and I started applying to absolutely everything under the sun. I applied to programming I applied to cyber jobs. I applied to just general IT. I finally, I applied both, and I'll come back to this because this was one of the lessons learned. I applied both as an experienced person because I do have an extensive background, and I also applied as a new grad because there's a lot of special programs out there that give priority to new college graduates. So I got hired to my job as a college graduate, which was fantastic in a way because I was getting turned down from other places. The downside was that I was really underpaid for my skills and my experience at this point in life. The thing is, I didn't know any better. I was just happy to get a job. So because I was kind of overexperienced for the position I was in, I did get promoted really quickly. But now looking at things about 5 years later, I'm actually still struggling to play catch up. I'm not really where I should be. I'm not in the same ballpark as my peers. So let me go to the successes. I think sticking with it, even $120,000 in business debt from failed ventures, you got to pick yourself up off the floor and work through it, pay it off. I had to pay off all that debt before I was able to get the job that I was at because, background check and working in the financial sector in IT and security doesn't work out if you've got a lot of debt. But I was able to pay that off. I leveraged my employee education reimbursement program to get a lot of certificates. I got my CISSP, my CEH, a lot of SANS certs. I finished my master's in computer science. My employer's been paying for all of that. So some of the lessons learned from my point of view: don't undersell yourself. It's okay if you're willing to settle for a little less than you're worth if you get a good opportunity, but just understand up front, you may, like I have, spend a lot of time catching up. The thing is, it's really hard to know what you're worth until after you're already doing the job and you're seeing your peers and you're kind of figuring out where you I guess match with them. So a little bit of a catch-22. My recommendation is to get mentoring, get advice from those that are already in the industry and can look at your skill set and kind of be that barometer for you. But also, as you do that, you got to be honest with yourself about your skill set. Don't exaggerate your skills. Just because you have a certificate in something, it makes a good HR filter. But if you don't actually have the knowledge behind that, if you just did a brain dump, for a cram exam, you're not going to get past the interview stage and you're not going to do well on the job. So you do need to make sure that your training and your skills match what you're putting forward. One final thing, when you're calculating your total compensation, I was trying to look at where I am in the industry, how I match up with my peers and things like that. You need to look at the benefits that you actually use if you're either unhappy where you're at or you're looking at other opportunities. Look at the benefits that you actually use or plan to use and do the math yourself, because they might say, hey, your total package is X amount, but a bunch of the things in there you're not ever going to use. You have things like adoption or things like that. Not everybody's in that stage of life. Not everyone's going to use that. So that's my little spiel.
No, awesome. I appreciate you sharing your story. One thing I clued in on there was the compensation talk. One thing I've definitely heard a lot of our members talk about is how to figure out, coming from the military where it's always so, open book. I mean, you can figure out what everybody's getting paid based on their rank and kind of where they're at, is how to figure out what you're worth. So that's an interesting point. I'd love to jump over to Travis. It looks like you're on the move right now.
Yeah. Hey, Tom. Hey, apologies. I am on the move, at least temporarily, but I'll be home soon. I'm not driving. Don't worry. I'm being chauffeured from a car appointment. But anyway, so hopefully you can. All right, sorry about that. My wife's also in a new car, so I'm just trying to figure out this out. Okay, so so hopefully you can hear me okay. Tough act to follow on the transition, very windy road. Mine was more of a deliberate path. So 20 years Navy. I was enlisted information systems technician for 9 of those years, and the rest of it I was first as a service warfare officer, and then as a officer information professional is the flavor of IW that I was. So, think communications, information systems management, and cybersecurity implementation and management. That's been our very similar to the Army Signal Corps. So I retired in August of 2020 and started my transition, I would say in earnest about 12 to 16 months prior to that, when I made the decision to retire at 20 versus continuing on to command. And, I have a couple of tidbits of advice for folks that are whether you've come from a background of service in cybersecurity or in IT, or whether you're start looking at it fresh, but be deliberate and have a lot of mentors. I was lucky enough to take advantage of the resources that I had. I was on shore duty, so I had onward opportunity. I took advantage of that. I took advantage of American corporate partners to get a mentor in the corporate side who really opened my eyes to compensation, understanding what I was worth, what I am worth to employers, understanding my value proposition, both on paper, right, via your resume and via your biography and via your LinkedIn. All of those things put together a whole person offering that an employer will look at potentially all of those things, but also from being able to contextualize all that and explain things in an interview. And in order to do that, I really had to talk to a lot of folks informally, do a lot of informal interviews. These informational interviews. I probably had 3 to 5 conversations a week for a good solid year, talking to people in industry. Some were veterans, many were not, and just get the lay of the land of exactly where I would fit, as I was ejecting. And one of the things that I will say is, if you think you know how to speak the language, I thought I did. I had an MBA. I made sure I deliberately went out and got a business degree so that I thought I understood how to speak business, and I thought that I could remove the military jargon. I got to tell you, 20 years is a long time to do anything, and it affects you in a way that maybe subconsciously you didn't even realize. Usually pick out a military member or a veteran from a crowd. Even if they've been gone, they've been out of uniform for 10 years. That's very true. And it's just the way that we speak, the way that we act, the way that we carry ourselves, the phrasing that we use, all of that resonates. And so I had to reframe my military experience in a way that made, first of all, made civilians feel comfortable asking questions. Otherwise, we seem very intimidating. A 20-year career, you talk about the commands that you've been to and the things that you've done, the deployments you've been on, and you think you're contextualizing it in a way that describes your skills, abilities, and awards you've won and accomplishments. But it tends to confuse and even intimidate potential employers, and it misses the message. So I had to get through all that before I finally realized how to tell a story the right way. So storytelling, I would definitely say, is a big thing that I really had to learn, and I'm still learning for the next 10, 15 years at least. And that doesn't mean shed your military persona or the things that you've done. Quite the opposite. It means integrating into a person. The uniform is not everything that you are. But it is a big piece of it. So I'll stop there. Happy to entertain questions. I'll look at the chat too. And hopefully you guys caught all that and I didn't go through a dead zone or something. So.
No, all good. Thank you very much, Travis. Yeah, I think the one thing that I've seen a lot of people in my time in the service, I'm at just over 20 years right now in the Navy. One thing I've seen a lot is people struggle when they don't have time to prepare, and I think especially for the Navy service, being on shore duty is a big advantage to making that transition, and having a command that can kind of understand what it really does take, which most people or everyone in the military hasn't ever made that transition out before unless they have prior service. So that can be something difficult for those commands to understand, is just how much time a member actually needs to work on that stuff to get out. So no, those are some great points. All right, Michael, you've been out for a while now. I'd love to hear your perspective.
Yeah, definitely. So I just act like I'm 12. I'm actually old. My BASD was in 1991, when I was 17 years old. So I grew up in Idaho, said, okay, I need to get out of here. And the Army said, hey, do you want to walk through the woods with a rifle? And I said, yeah, okay, I could do that. And then they said, hey, you're pretty smart. They sent me to language school in Monterey, and then I was a SIG-Inter, right? So I was a Russian speaking SIG-Inter. It's been an interesting week. But I ETS'd in 1999. I was stationed in Germany at the time. So basically they said, hey, we could give you a ticket to any place. I went to Oregon. I didn't really know why. It was because of my wife. And then 2 years later, basically the .com era, all the tech companies crashed. And I said, okay, well, I taught myself how to do Linux system administration. I taught myself how to do web programming. I've got this security background, even though it's absolutely hard to explain to people what it is that I used to do. And so I said, okay, I need to move to DC. So in 2002, I said either I need to go to DC or I need to go to California. That's where the jobs are at. Okay. I've kind of went to this backwater and not much happened there. And so then a month later, I got a job. It was a horrible project, absolutely horrible, and I didn't get paid much at all. So 85K for DC area, which is like, I was living in an apartment with roaches. But I went there and I learned a ton of things, and I worked on a wide variety of government projects over the course of 10 years of living inside DC. And every 2 years, I would bump out to a different job, get a promotion, because nobody promotes inside DC. So I would get a new job, get a promotion, hold out for another 2 years, get a new job, get a promotion, and sort of bumped around like that for a series of 10 years. Then I looked around and I said, okay, I'm a pretty senior guy now. And so I went off to Akamai. They deliver websites. They deliver about 30% of the web. And I went there as a security specialist and worked my way up through that. So in the meantime, I've done chief information security officer jobs. I've done chief technical officer jobs for security startups. I've done startup mentoring. And one of the things that I started doing last year was teaching for a cybersecurity boot camp, which is it's a program that's white labeled. So the universities present it as their own, but it's actually contracted to a company that provides all the content, all the instructors. And I'm teaching mostly Internet of Things security, so embedded device security, radio frequency stuff, which just touches a lot of my previous life, some programming, some device firmware. So all of that. I think, things that I would do better. Number one is I would understand job markets. All right. So don't go to Oregon. Don't go to Idaho. There's nothing there. I know that's why I left. There's nothing there. Okay. Look at where your big markets are, and where people have jobs. There are sites that'll tell you where all these are, but it's just like, if you view a job in this field as a target, you want to go to a target rich environment. You have better odds there. And to be fair, my first job was absolutely awesome. It was a horrible job, but I learned so much, got certifications, started to add on to it. That first job is always the toughest one, right? Especially if you're coming from overseas. That's almost impossible to find a job on a different continent when you're ETSing. Okay. Um, Other stuff that I would do, we talked about mentoring, but the advice that I give folks is that plus a bit more. So find people that are out of the service that you can build your own board of advisors. So treat yourself like you're a company and get an advisor who understands finance. So get yourself a chief financial advisor. Get yourself somebody who understands the cybersecurity space. Find somebody who understands just business and meet with them once a month, once a quarter. Simple stuff. Coffee. Let's have coffee. Let's have lunch and go through, hey, these are problems. I had this problem with this thing. How would you handle that, right? Get kind of that well-rounded advice. Have 4, 5, 6 advisors, people that you can call on for help with problems like that. Okay. And I think that's about it. Like compensation, honestly, compensation, I don't worry about, but that's me. Like, after I got off active duty, I went into the reserves as an infantryman. So like I can go sleep on a corner someplace. I don't really care about that. Don't care. What I do care about is finding a company, finding a project where I can do awesome stuff. And in doing awesome stuff, I look for the places where nobody knows how to do something. I try to figure it out because I have that, can do attitude. I try to figure out how to do that, teach other people how to do it, and then I'm on to the next one, right? So it's more of like, it's a campaign of little projects pieced together, trying to teach other people and bring them along. And that's what I'm always on the move for, is things that I can learn from, where I can actually grow and move on to the next thing.
Oh, awesome. One question you did hit on, stay out of the less target rich environments like Oregon, Idaho, places like that. How do you think, if any, has that changed with the, COVID, remote work, all those environments?
I would still caution. About that. If you're a senior person with well-developed skills, it's a lot easier to hire you remotely. Okay. So right now I'm a hiring manager, except for the part where I'm a jobless hobo this month, but we'll put that to the side. But I'm hiring people, and if it's your first job, you need a lot more care and feeding, right? Like I look at you like you're a private E1. Okay. That's your first job. And so hopefully you get paid more and we'll give you more responsibility and things like that. But you take a lot more care and feeding and a lot more interaction for that first, second, third job, assuming 2 years each, right? Past that, you're 6 years, you're 6 years out in the career field. You can synthesize a lot of things, but it's really hard to get hired to an entry-level remote position. That's changing, but you're playing the odds, right? Which is, what is the best chance for you for success? And that really means going to an area that has lots of jobs. DC area, Northern Virginia, Maryland, you won't have a problem. California, you'll do pretty well, except for rent is sky high. So it's a high risk kind of play. Anything around Austin, probably pretty good. Or San Antonio, especially if you're doing some kind of a transition. That's a good area. Everything else I'd be very, very careful about and understand where the tech companies are in that area before I move there.
Yeah, good point. Thank you very much, Michael. Joseph, you're up.
All right, thank you. I'm going to set a timer so I don't go too long. But yeah, so
did you just ban me? No, just kidding.
All right. So my name's Joey. I'm a human being. I always introduce myself like that because I'm not perfect and I can make mistakes. And I want to thank Tom for setting this up, and everybody else that has shared a little bit of insight. I love it. I'm still new in my career, so I'm kind of like an E1, right? That's kind of how I have that mentality right now in my job. My story is a little bit different than other people's. I was in the Army as a forward observer in 2010 to 2014, and I deployed to Afghanistan. And when I came back, I did not handle life well, and I ended up getting a DUI and going AWOL for 32 days and smoking a little bit of reefer and getting chaptered out for the DUI and going AWOL. And so I got chaptered out with an other than honorable discharge. And so at this point in my life, I was 20, 23, 24, and I had lost all sense of self and all sense of direction. And I was homeless for about a year, moving up and down the West Coast. And eventually I made it back home, just like we all do. It's like once you've made your journey, you always end up back home. So I used my family to enroll back in college, and I used my father as a figure for that because he's been working in IT for 30, 40 years. And so that's kind of the direction I went. I went for IT. And throughout this process, I started getting involved with organizations like the Mission Continues or Wounded Warrior Project, and I started trying to find my sense of self again by being of service to the community. And that's kind of that was kind of where I started kind of my mend process, where it was like, I didn't know how to handle it, how to handle my past and my mistakes and what was going on in my head. And so I used what I had known from the Army of how to just to move forward with that. And so I went to George Mason University. I got accepted there after being on double secret probation at my local community college because I had flunked out a couple of years prior to that, and kind of started flourish. So I got involved with Student Veterans of America organization on campus, and they have them all on all campuses. And I started getting involved with them, and they brought me into service projects. And I know this doesn't really have anything to do with cybersecurity, but it does. And I'll move forward with that. As I progressed at George Mason University, I was trying to work, and I got a lucky break. I got an internship at an IT help desk position by basically a veteran-run small business, small IT business. And so they kind of built me from the ground up. I mean, I was just a wreck. I knew how to work, and I knew how to, do hard labor and stuff like that. But, my skills in the workplace were really screwy. And so my boss came to me and he said, "Hey, your attitude is screwed up." And I didn't know how to handle that. I thought I was doing great. And but I took that and I went and I changed my attitude, and I went and got Security Plus, CompTIA Security Plus. And from there I started doing a lot better. And I moved as a data center technician from that position to AWS as a data center technician. And then from there, I moved to a kind of a much bigger company at an IT help desk. And but from there, I knew I wanted to get into cybersecurity. And I was frequent on forums like IT Career Help on Reddit and all these different forums. And I was trying to figure out a way to get into cybersecurity. And I knew that it was hard to get into cybersecurity after working in IT for so long. And at this point, I had been working in IT for about 3 or 4 years. And so I got involved. I interviewed. This is a long shot, but I interviewed for this organization that was promoting on campus. They're called Cybersecurity Talent Initiative, and what they do is they hook civilians up with government entities that want to hire new, fresh faces in cybersecurity. And so what you do is you go through a rigorous interview process, and if you get hired, you'll get hired by any one of their sponsoring organizations, government organizations, and they'll and what they'll do is you'll do 2 years of service there, and then you'll do 2 years of service in a private sponsor. So some of the private sponsors are like Microsoft, MasterCard, blah 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 blah. But what they'll do is they'll train you and they'll give you a security clearance. And so that's through my experience, not only in the Army, but my experience with working with nonprofits, doing service, doing service events, and not only just doing them, but I started engaging them. I started coordinating them. Like I was the coordinator. And I had some guy like backing me. I wasn't just doing this on my own. I had people helping me, and so I was able to talk about this in the interview process. And so you think about some of these questions that interviewers are going to ask, and you kind of use what is it? The STAR method. The STAR method was very big for me because I was able to use these kind of exterior examples to help. Build a picture of who I am and what I'm about. And so, what does that have to do with anything? I was able to break into cybersecurity and get hired by the Coast Guard, even though about 8 years prior, I had completely screwed my life up. I mean, I just really, I was really messed up. And now the government wants me back. It's just incredible. And I can't explain it. All I did was kind of just show up and really try my hardest, try my best. And so, when I'm in these positions, one of the things that really helps me is knowing my strengths and my weaknesses. So like for me, I'm able to kind of go up to people and kind of talk to them and kind of see what the issue is or see where they're at. But my weaknesses, for me, I have trouble staying structured and staying committed. And so that's kind of what I've been working on this year with staying in the gym, because I don't know if you guys, I don't know if you picked up on this, but when I was going through school and I was working full time, you can't handle it. It's hard to handle that, especially if you've got a wife and kids, especially if you've got all this other stuff going on. And I burnt out. I got fired by AWS as a contractor. And I really had to take a look at myself and see where I was at. And I started changing my ways and changing what my actions were during the day and what was really important to me. And so what I know now through therapy and through working with a bunch of different mentors, spiritual mentor, career mentor, I have two of those right now, and a therapist. And so those three things have really helped me understand that if I don't work out, I get screwy in the head. And if I don't eat right, I don't sleep right. And that doesn't work well when you're under pressure. And so that's just one example of how if you're able to balance your life, not just in cybersecurity, because I'm doing all these things, I'm doing trainings, I'm doing, that's the stuff that a lot of people talk about, a lot of people focus on. But what I'm trying to insinuate is that, all these other things that you do for your mental health and for your physical health will really impact your performance in the future in cybersecurity. So yeah, that's all I got. Thank you for letting me share.
Hey, I really appreciate it, and that's an awesome story of coming from, what you went through to build up to where you're at now, and I really appreciate you taking the time to join us and talk about that today. That's awesome. I was going to say something else, but now I just completely blanked on what it was. So we'll go on to Tom. Tom, please share your story.
Okay, thanks, Tom, and thank you, Joe. I appreciate your honesty about the struggles that you had and that you overcame. I actually have an old shipmate of mine who got out of the Navy a long time ago under less than stellar circumstances, and I'm trying to convince him to get involved in organizations such as VetSec and others that let him know that there's still a place for him. And so I appreciate you being so open and honest. Well, about me, I transitioned out of the military twice. First time, not such a great experience. It was in early 2000s. I had started my career as a Korean linguist, DLI, traditional SIGINT, and I was very good at it, and I was very cocky as well. But I got out with a conditional letter of employment. Conditional was the operative word, and so I found myself unemployed with no degree and really good Korean language skills at a time when the correct answer is Arabic. So there I was in Detroit with nothing to do and no degree, literally living in my mom's basement. It was a pretty unfortunate situation. I'll spare you the details of that, but I ended up back in the military, not only because I needed the job and I needed the money, but I missed it. I missed the camaraderie, the teamwork, the sense of mission and whatnot. So I came back in on active duty, and at the time, having experienced unemployment and living in my mother's basement as a 30-something-year-old man, I decided that although I would take my military career more seriously during the second half than I did the first, I would also make sure that I would never be unemployed again. So if there was opportunities for new training or whatnot, I was going to take it. And that basically led me into the cyber field. I came back in and went back to DLI for more language training, and went to a cyber unit right out of DLI. It was a good time to be, it was 2012, 2013. It was a good time to get involved in the cyber field with the Navy, especially because they had lots of money, lots of training, and they did not have very specific training pipelines. So as a linguist in the Navy, they'd say, we need anybody to go to this training. Who wants to go? I'd raise my hand. Oh, I want to go. They're like, but not you. You're a linguist. Anybody but you. And but in the beginning of cybercom and all that, didn't have that problem. They'd be like, who wants to get their CEH? Who wants to get CISSP? And I was like, I'll go. And they're like, cool. We have money. Here you go. And so I got I got a lot of certifications. Got some experience, and was able to transition into the cyber field full time that way. So I thought I was set. I thought, I'm set for life now. I've got CISSP, and I work for Cybercom, and I'm good to go. But at the same time, there was such growth. There was such growth in the cyber community in the military over the last 10 years that I found myself with a lot of certifications, a lot of training, but not a lot of practical experience as these new units were being set up with, we're going to do this and we're going to do that, but we're not doing it right now. We got to do all these other things first. And so probably the last 2 or 3 tours I did was a lot of paper push and a lot of admin and not a lot of actual practical on keyboard experience. So I retired about a month ago, a little more than a month. And a year out from there, like 12 months ago when I started looking for work in earnest, I was terrified. I was absolutely terrified because I was the proverbial paper tiger. I had all the certifications. I was getting more and didn't have a lot of experience. So I was just terrified about what was I going to do. I knew the field I wanted to get into, cybersecurity. Of course, a lot of people and want to get into cybersecurity, but I would offer that that's too broad and try to find something a little more specific. I found that for myself as well, that was a problem because I knew I wanted to be an OT ICS field, but even within that, it's very broad, and there's a lot of things that you can do, and so it was terrifying this last year. I had a lot of doubt. Do I have any skills? Am I employable? Am I going to get a job in this field? And I've been very fortunate. I found a great position. I lucked into it. Did I luck into it? I don't know. I got a lot of support and I got a lot of mentorship and was ready when the opportunities arose. I should say that. But so I don't know. I just got so many different anecdotes to share. But I guess since I'm talking about my lack of practical experience and a lot of certifications, I imagine there's many of you out there that might find yourself in that same situation. So I get that all the time. What should I get for a certification? What should my next certification be? I got this one. I'm going to go get that one next. I would offer that, maybe that's not the way to go. Maybe focus on a couple, 2, 3 high value certifications and really focus on those. Get the basics down. Know what a router is. Know how to subnet. Nobody likes subnetting, but know how to do it. Know what it means. Know the basic vulnerabilities and mitigations, and know where to get answers if you don't know them. But you can't be expected to know everything. So even if you do have, I don't even know how many certifications I have anymore. I have too many. It got to the point where when I was sending in resumes, I would take a lot of them off, just so I didn't look like I was just like a bookworm. But anyway, yes, try to focus on a couple key certifications, get your basic skills down, and I would also recommend you focus on what exactly it is in cybersecurity you want to do, right? There's so many things, so many opportunities. Like Michael was talking about, he started off, he's like, okay, I'm working on these cool projects. I'm learning these things. Now I can go learn something else. So we're all going to have to do the same thing too. So pick something that you're interested in and go that way. If you're not sure, these kind of things are a great place to start. Hit us up on LinkedIn or wherever. Start developing your network, and just ask us, hey, can you sit down and talk with me and tell me what you do? How did you get there? Do you like the job? I'm interested in this. What do you think about that? And try to focus on where you want to go. I also hear a lot of people getting out. They're like, oh, I sent out 150 resumes and I got no responses. And I'm like, well, that makes sense. Like if you just send out resumes blindly, that's going to happen. Every resume that I just submitted or sent out without making a phone call or making a connection first, I never got a call back, never got an interview. 100% of the time I sent a resume after making some personal connection, I would at least get an interview. It's not going to guarantee you anything. You still have to put in the effort and in the work. You got to make it through that interview process on your own. But having that personal connection is going to make it easier for you. What else? Yeah, I guess so. Informational interviews is what they're called. Just get out there and I never asked anybody for a job. I've never asked anybody for referral or recommendation, I just ask, what is it that you do? I'm interested in these things. Do you do these kind of things where you work? What's your day-to-day like? What kind of skills do you wish you had when you were starting out? Things of that sort, and just work from there. So yeah, get involved in these veterans groups. We're here to help. Get involved, make sure that your LinkedIn page is ready to go, and don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to ask for help. So I guess unless there's any questions, I guess I'll just stop there. Like I said, it's still so fresh for me right now, and the result of this last year of terror and stress, I'm just real happy where I ended up. I'll just say that it's exceeded all my expectations where I ended up. So if sometimes I just start talking and I can't shut up. So, but I just I want to make sure I want everyone else's experience as they transition to be as stress-free as possible, and so that everyone can succeed in the end.
Yeah, Tom, thank you very much for sharing as well. I guess as the person here who's still on active duty myself, hearing the stories from people who are very recently separated hits pretty close to home, especially with a lot of the anxiety, call it imposter syndrome or whatnot. Hey, am I going to be able to find something? Are my qualifications worth it? And all those kinds of things. And I hear that from members in VetSec almost every day. You guys all, I think one common thread that everyone talked about was mentorship, networking, and support. And one thing I have found to be very true as well is kind of the importance of that in, like you said, if you fire off 100 resumes at 100 random job postings, you're probably not going to get the call back or the email. But when you make the personal connection somewhere, you definitely will. What are some tips, and anybody who wants to jump on, please do. What are some tips that everyone here has for networking and making that step? One thing I've found is finding a veteran at a company that interests me and trying to reach out and just asking them questions like you did, Tom. Just, hey, what do you do? What are you looking for? But anything else, please.
Yeah, if you allow me to talk a little bit about that, I had the dream company, right? The dream company that I wanted to work for. There's maybe 200-300 employees there. They're in the IT OCS field. And I was like, I totally want to work for them. I drive past their office every day on the way to work. And I was talking about a year ago, I was talking to somebody about that. And they're like, well, you should just get on LinkedIn and find out who you know that works there, because there's veterans everywhere. And I was like, 200-300 people. I don't know anybody that works there. But I went home, got on LinkedIn, and I was right. I didn't know anybody that works there. Nobody. But I knew somebody that did know a guy. And I was like, what's the worst that could happen here? So I just hit him up. I was like, hey, I see that so-and-so is one of your connections. Do you actually know him? Can you introduce me? He works for a company that I'm interested in. And probably within a week, I was having a Skype conversation, much like we are now. It was scheduled to go like 15 or 20 minutes. I talked to him for 2 hours. I've corresponded with him regularly since. Met him in person at a convention, and he's been great. It was a great way to start my search. And now I come to find out that it was a great company, but it might not have been the company for me. I ended up interviewing with them. It didn't work out, but through that, I met other people and ended up in the position I'm in now. Through further networking, but it all started with that, taking that one step. Who do I know that works there, or who do I know that knows somebody that works there? And one thing that I found is pretty much everyone out there, if they're on LinkedIn, they're willing to talk to you and willing to help you. Like I haven't found anyone that's like, no, I don't have time to talk to you. I'm not going to respond to you. Haven't had that at all. And if you do, that's probably an indicator that that's probably not the direction you want to go. But yeah, just get out there and ask. Say, hey, do you have 10, 15 minutes so I can ask you about what it is you do for a living? You'll probably be pleasantly surprised by how willing people are to help.
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody else?
Yeah, I like to chime in there, which is that a lot of the connections that I found and a lot of the avenues that I was able to take were a direct result of me trying to get out of myself and just be of service. And so that in my head, that doesn't make sense, right? But when you look at it on a real plane, it allowed me to be in a position where I was teachable. And so people want to hire people that are teachable, I think. And so at least that's been my experience. So, I'll give a plug out to the Mission Continues. They're a great organization, veteran-based organization where they do service projects. Wounded Warrior Project is a great networking opportunity as well. There's Student Veterans of America. I know I talked about that. But there's a whole bunch of veteran organizations that just because they don't necessarily pertain to cybersecurity, you'll be able to get out and just start talking to people. And the more practice you have interviewing, like was said before, the more practice you have talking to people, the more practice you have even talking with civilians, it'll help you when you're in that spot, because you will be put in that spot. I mean, the companies want to hire veterans. We have a particular skill set that is desirable for companies. The problem is bridging the gap. And so the easier you're able to interview, the easier you're able to talk to people by placing yourself in a position to be of service. That, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've talked about stuff like that in an interview and just killed it. When I graduated from college, I had my mentor told me, he said, you're gonna take your pick. And I was so unsure of myself, and I didn't know what was gonna happen, because I was jobless and I was running out of money. And I was like, what's gonna happen? But I took my pick from 3 different positions because I was able to focus on that and talk about things, not just on cybersecurity, even though I did put the work in on doing home labs and doing trainings through LinkedIn Learning. Those things were really valuable for me talking about in an interview. But I think what really set me over the mark was talking about being in a position of leadership, or being in a position to be led. So thank you.
I'd like to add something there too. So I've been a VetSec member for a year or 2. I don't know how long it's been actually, because I was not really involved in much. But going back to that volunteering aspect of things, I got to a point where I realized that I had gotten a lot. I was blessed by circumstances or God, or however you want to look at it. And I needed to take the next step in who I am as a person. I needed to be able to give something back. And I'm an introvert by nature. I don't like getting up in front of people and talking. I've kind of had to force myself into that and learn to be more friendly and outgoing and being willing to open up and things like that. I recently got more involved here at VetSec by volunteering to be a mentor. I've got 5 people that I'm mentoring right now. And it's not that I am, the bastion of knowledge and I have all this stuff to offer. It's like, no, I just need to help. I can share my story like I'm doing right now. I feel a real urgent need to give something back. And I have met so many people, just that willingness to be open and talk about my experiences. Also in some of the training courses that I've done, basically almost all online the last couple of years, and being willing to help people that were struggling. And I still have people that come back to me, a year later and like, hey, how's it going? Last time we talked, this was going on. How's How did that work out for you? Do you have advice? I'm in a similar situation. I make it a point to reply to everybody on LinkedIn that reaches out to me, even if they're completely random strangers, unless I know that it's some sort of a marketing ploy, someone trying to sell me training or something like that. they can go away. But if it's a legit question, I just make sure I try to make myself available. And it's not because I'm all that. It's just I really feel like this is a great way to give back, and it's given me all these opportunities to meet people and expand my network like more than ever in any other time in my life.
Yeah, I would definitely say I credit most of my own network building as I'm working towards my own retirement, towards VetSec, and towards just having the opportunity to participate in things like this and other opportunities. I want to personally thank you for reaching out and being a mentor inside VetSec, because it definitely does help. I've heard a lot of good feedback from all the people that have signed up to be mentors from the mentees themselves. And I think that's great. I do want to shift really quick to a question that we got from somebody watching on LinkedIn. I have 2 weeks left on terminal leave, and I'm trying to remain optimistic on finding a job. I have my Security Plus, and I'm working on getting my CEH. 2 weeks is a little shorter than the transition timelines that a lot of us have talked about, but I'd like to see what advice you guys have for kind of that short notice. I'm looking for a job hunt.
Can I jump in real quick? So yes, the timeline is short, but I think what you guys have heard before is, echoing some of my colleagues here, is be deliberate with credentials. You have Security Plus, which makes you qualify DoD 8570 for a certain a certain skill set. Getting your CEH, I would question why your CEH. Are you trying to be a threat hunter? Are you trying to be a pen tester? Are those the jobs you're going after? Be deliberate with your credentials. And it's not just money, maybe your CEH is covered, but it's time as well. Time is an investment, and when you're out, time is money. In fact, time to me is more valuable than now anything else. So the credentials that I choose to go after, in my career, and we're all at different points in our career, I know that is really important. So you're already qualified. Look to what's going to get you the job you want, and to be specialized in the specialization of cybersecurity that you want. I think, Joe, it was you that said that, and we talked about specialization. And Tom, I think you maybe touched on it a little bit too. It's just the field is really, really fast. And the amount of credentials that you can go after are in the hundreds now. And organizations, and the career path, how you get there is varied. I could show you, all of us here, but I could give you 10 colleagues that I work with. All of them had very different paths to get where they are today. If you want to be an accountant, I can tell you exactly how to go be an accountant, right? You have to go get the training, and then you have to go get licensed. And then once you're licensed, then, then you have the ability to practice. Want to be a lawyer? Tell you how to get to be a lawyer. How to be a cybersecurity practitioner? I don't know. There's 10 different specializations. There's at least 8 domains that see and every credential thinks that there are different sets of domains and different specializations. So it's just so many different paths to be there. I could show you lawyers that have gone to be cybersecurity practitioners and have become governance and risk and compliance specialists. And they took a weird path to get there, and they're not technical experts either, but they're just as valuable as I am in the organization, that have come up from the technical side. So be deliberate in your credentials, and finally ask for help. You will never find another veteran that in my experience, that will turn down a conversation. And that also, being out of the military, and then I'm going to shut up, I promise. Being out of the military is the great equalizer. So all ranks, all pay grades, people that you maybe would not have approached in uniform, are very, very approachable now and would love to talk to you, to lift you up, even if it's just lifting your spirits and tell you that you have value. And that goes from, somebody who's getting out as an E5, somebody's getting out as an 03, 04, can go talk to the 2-star and the 3-star that was totally unreachable before, who's now a board member of some company, maybe not a company that you want to work with, but can maybe make some connections, or at the very least can offer you some advice and maybe make an introduction. So, do not be afraid to ask for help, no matter what pay grade you think you're reaching out to.
Yeah, I'll add in here, which is that ultimately you have to understand that the hiring process is broken. Okay, the hiring process is broken. So when you see a job and you submit your resume, and so you say, okay, here's my resume. That's not actually designed for companies to find the right people. That's designed to filter people out. Okay, so if your resume doesn't have the right keywords that they're looking for, it's a naive keyword search. Okay, did you say network? Did you say certification name? Did you say um, piece, specific firewall, specific antivirus? That's what those systems actually look for, is they gauge that against what the job description is. It's a horrible process and it's absolutely broken. So when you're somebody like me, I've been in this field for 30 years. There is nothing that I can't do. But the application tracking systems absolutely hate me, and I hate them. It's fairly mutual, and I'm okay with that. What that means is, okay, SIGINTER, how does that translate? That's not a firewall. We don't know what to do with you. And anytime I can get an interview, people are like, oh my God, we love you. This is awesome. But I realize that. So my strategy always involves going through the back door. Okay. Yes, I have a backdoor strategy. You can tease me about it later. But the front door doesn't work for me. The back door is how I get in places. Okay. How do I build the back door? I go to conferences. Okay. You go to bsides.org. There are a bunch of not commercial conferences that happen throughout the course of the year. A lot of them are, it's $20 for a ticket, $20 for a ticket, or it's free. This is awesome stuff. It is absolutely worth your time to take vacation time, holiday time to go to a conference. Volunteer for the conference. They're all not profit type things. They always need help with organization, but you're not just there to be slave labor. Your job there is to meet people and say, hey, what do you do? And I'm horribly non-tactful about this. I just walk up to people in the hallway. Hi, I'm Mike. What do you know? What do you do? And they're like, okay. But then we have that conversation. But meet people and say, hey, here's what I'm doing. I'm looking for somebody who, I'm looking for a company that does this. Does anybody know somebody who's looking? Also, all the vendors are there. They have their booths, but you can go talk to them. Okay. So I do that. If I see that there's a good job that's listed someplace, LinkedIn, I look through my connections to find who do I know that works there. Okay. And then I message them and say, hey, you guys were hiring for this role. Could you do me a favor and backdoor me into the company? Can you take my resume or my CV and talk to the hiring manager about me? Because if I'm a hiring manager, I've got this cold, heartless ATS system, which is recursive, I know. But I've got this whole cold, heartless application tracking system that feeds people, it weeds people out. And I have one of the people who works for the company who comes to me and says, hey, you're hiring for this position. Here's somebody that I know. They're good. They're smart. Would they fit in this role? That carries 1,000 times more weight than this cold, heartless, naive word matching system. Okay. And so that has a huge amount of value just by that alone. Jokingly, I think of that as it's the E4 mafia approach, right? So in the military, you've got the official chain of command, but really the way things get done is the E4 mafia is out on smoke break and they're like, hey, we got to do this. Yeah, man, this kind of sucks. And then they go get it done, right? So think of it as that's your strategy, is building this informal group, this informal community in order to route around this hiring system that we have that's actually broken.
Yeah, I think excellent tips, Mike. One thing from just my own personal look at informational interviews and everything else is that like what Michael said, the ATS system, it just isn't designed to work the way that we all think it does when we're in the military. I think, hey, I just take all my skills and I translate them into what it means in the civilian world, and then I have this resume, and then I throw it at this job that I meet 50% of the requirements for, and then I'm going to get an interview and I'm good to go. And that really isn't the case. And every time, two things when I've had the informational interviews that I'm going through, one, I always get asked questions that are more about my background than what I thought we were going to talk about on the resume, and find other value adds that our service brings to those roles. And then we start thinking of other ways about ourselves that we can bring value to those roles. And two, I just find out how much more the networking is important, and the scouring Indeed.com for the right job listing is less important. And then, I've been on terminal since January, went through a skill bridge program, and I've been applying for jobs for a month. I think I'm willing to bet that you're trying that front door approach and throwing a lot of applications out. And then the other piece I would add is the kind of the soft skills approach, the networking, the working on the resume, and those pieces that I think panels like this help with for sure. I think communities like VetSec, Operation Code, and others can definitely help. There's 6 of us here today, but our resume reviews channel over on VetSec has 3,363 members right now in it. And they love ripping apart resumes. I speak from personal experience with that.
Hey, what are some good conferences to go to?
B-sides. If there's one that's in your area, go to it. Do the in-person one, okay? Anything that's in person that's a local one. So next week is Boston Secure World. I was supposed to go way back when, and it got canceled because of COVID. Now it's back on and it's in person. Anything that you can go in person is awesome. That's great. B-sides is good because it's community driven and it's cheap. Like Secure World Boston was, I think it was like $400. It was like insane. Most people going to the expensive conferences, well, RSA is like absolutely crazy. But what you want is small, personable, community driven. Okay. There are other things that are out there too. So if you go to CitySec, we have a group. It's been on hiatus because of COVID, but there is a group here in Boston. So I live north of Boston. But there's a group in Boston that is BeanSec. And literally it is once a month, we have beer and talk about InfoSec things. Okay. There's a once a month Boston security meetup that's on meetup.org. Okay. And that same thing, they usually have a presentation or two, and then pizza. And then they kind of have a period in the break where they say, if you're looking for a job or if you're hiring, go over here and talk. Okay. Like really, really low key community stuff. You meet senior people, you meet junior people, you might learn some things. Okay. That's my flavor. The information security conferences business is a huge money-making thing. Okay. So like, as a vendor at a conference, I think we've paid $150K for 4 days as a top level sponsor at RSA conference. Okay. It's this huge money-making engine. I absolutely hate them. And every time I go there, I feel dirty because it's like, buy our shit, or buy our stuff. And I'm like, oh, I just can't handle it anymore. small community events are absolutely awesome because it's a lot more intimate environment and you can meet a lot of people that way. City secs are absolutely awesome. Go drink beer, talk to nerds. That's cool. We'll also look for other groups that might not be necessarily InfoSec. So when I was first getting started in all of this, I did a ton of things with my local Linux user group, right? Linux user group, like build systems, tear systems down, install web servers. Like I did it all. That actually I was able to parlay into one of my first IT jobs. Okay. So don't just think, security, but also like general IT stuff. You can meet people that way, because if all you're doing is talking to InfoSec people, well, they already have jobs, right? You talk to the IT people, they're like, hey, I need somebody who can solve this problem for me that I don't know how to do it. That's very complementary to what you can do.
I was going to jump in, but I can't top any of that. That's all terrific. I will say that if you're still searching for things locally, look at chapters of associations too. ISC Squared, ISACA, they all have local chapters. I will caveat that with there's that silly military word like that, and like long pole in the tent, and like all those are all things that I wish I could just take out of my brain, but I can't. Sometimes I say them. Not all those chapters are created equal. So not all of them will do great in-person events. Some of them have gone virtual and have never gone back. Those can be wastes of time unless you need the training or you need the CEUs for your certifications. Michael, I do like how you contextualize like the big conferences versus the little conferences. The big conferences are definitely, go there to get your CEUs, go there to maybe learn a thing or two from a presenter that you admire. I would also say too, go to a conference that is within your specialization or your wheelhouse. If you're a cybersecurity or IT professional and you really want to focus on national defense or national security, go to the Intelligence and National Security Summit and talk to that fusion of industry and government officials and military officials, and maybe even see some shipmates and some fellow soldiers that you knew. And somehow that turns into opportunities, turns into conversations. You never know when the next conversation is going to come around that's going to have a lasting impact, or somebody's going to remember something you said and then circle back around and say, and that turns into something else. So, but I also echo in person. Virtual is really only good for like CEUs and learning. Beyond that, they all claim to have like some networking component, and they're all lying. There's no networking component. There's nobody in those chat rooms that's going to suddenly, unless you actually recognize someone.
Yeah, so definitely agree on the virtual conferences being a terrible place to network. However, virtual training, if you're online taking a course together and you're both students of that course and you're trying to work things through, I found that is actually a great way to connect with people. And I've done some SANS courses. I've done some other courses with other people that have still come back and are still current contacts of mine, still keep in touch. So also, I just want a complete side note. I think it's great that 50% of our representation here is from DLI. I was also a Chinese linguist, so there's that.
I speak English and a little bit of Klingon. I don't know if that helps.
Nerd.
Right. Yep. Guilty.
All right.
I think Jimmy had a question. Sorry.
Yeah, that's where I was going next. Thanks, Joey. So Jimmy's asking just, do we have any advice on how to gain experience? From a personal standpoint, I've heard the talk in VetSec a lot about home labs, online kind of competency-based learning kind of avenues. But I'm curious what else you guys think is out there for gaining experience.
I guess it just depends on where you want to go. Once you figure out a flight path, you figure out, okay, like for me, I want to be in incident response in 5 years. So I've tried to set up a plan for that. And I try not to be, rigid on that plan. But for For example, I'm taking a SANS course in July in Washington, D.C. for SEC 504. So that's kind of, and I'm trying to mold to that so that in 2 years I'll be closer to that path. But there's so many different avenues that you can go. You can like, for example, like for me, I want to get better at Python. So I bought a Python book. I want to I'm going to get more involved in CTFs, capture the flags. That kind of keeps it fun. The homeland. I've also been able to set up a project with my group, my CTI group, that's kind of extra, and we're just going with ideas, and we're trying to move forward with the ideas, and that's kind of. I don't think it's necessarily just about experience, but the things that stick are stuff that you're interested in, and stuff that you like, and that you can take pride in because you knew you did something with it, and you knew you took an idea and kind of ran with it. So for me, what I'm having trouble with is figuring out how to start a blog. I really don't know where to begin with that. I mean, I know how to make a website. I know how to host it. But will that really be helpful? Are there avenues where people have done? I really haven't searched too hard on that, but I've done a couple Google searches that haven't really come up with anything. So that's another way you can gain experience. I'll shut up. Thank you.
I'll answer that one for you. I don't care. Right? Because I look at it as everybody knows something. Okay. And I don't think necessarily like, yeah, there is a certain amount of experience that you need to have. And so the question was originally around gaining experience. As a hiring manager, I don't really care if you've done something for 5 years or 10 years. What I want to know is, can you go apply that? Okay. And not even that. What I really want to know, because this is the career field changes. Okay. Like, I've been doing this thing for 30 years. Yeah. Not to sound like a broken record. But it's changed so much. Okay. It changes every 2 or 3 years. Things change. Oh, like zero trust. Okay. Nobody knew what zero trust was 3 years ago. They were like, oh, what the heck are you talking about? What I want is I want to hire people that are polymaths, so they know many weird things and they can pivot, and I can throw something new at them and say, hey, here's this thing, zero trust, go figure it out. Okay. Or SASE. Right. I don't even know how many people know what SASE is. Here's SASE, go figure it out. Right. And you go, okay, that's cool. Or here's Log4j. What's Log4j? I don't know. Let's go figure it out. And I want people that are passionate about what they do, so that they'll go, yeah, you know what? I'm absolutely curious about what this is, and I need to go figure it out, right? Like they keep learning. And so a blog is awesome. Write about whatever. Okay. Write about whatever. Write about what you know. I don't care if you are the 50th person, or it's not 50th, 5 millionth person on the planet who does a tutorial for installing Kali Linux. Don't care. I really don't care. What that demonstrates, though, to me is, number one, you can execute on that mission. You can take Kali and you can install it at least once because you wrote it down, right? Maybe not twice, but you can do it at least once. And you care enough about it to write it down. Okay. So one of the things that I do with my students, and mentees that are not even entry level yet, they're trying to get that first interest. Start a blog, get a free blog on Medium, get one on hosted WordPress, get something where you don't have to maintain the thing, where somebody else maintains it, and start writing what I learned in class today, right? Here's an exercise. Here's a lab exercise that I did. I'm going to give you the walkthrough. Okay. There's another value there. I have tons of tech people who have worked for me. Sometimes I need the ones who can actually document what the heck they did. Okay. Because I have to make it repeatable. Everybody smiles and shake their head. Yeah. And so sometimes the point is to demonstrate that you can actually write and explain and give me screenshots, give me a talk through as a tutorial. You don't have to be the best. You don't have to be the first, but you have to be. Okay. Get that thing down, get it into writing. If you're good at video post-production, you could have your own YouTube channel. It doesn't even have to be you doing technical stuff. You could interview people that are in the cybersecurity world or in the tech world and ask them like, hey, what do you do? That also doubles because that's that informal interview thing that you got going, right? Because like me, I have not a lot of time, but a lot of experience. So what I'm always looking for is how can I actually help people out by having somebody who doesn't mind doing the pre-production and post-production, okay? Because I don't have enough time to actually, make graphics and slice and dice and add soundtracks and all of that stuff. But create content, put it out there. Don't worry. In 10 years, you'll be embarrassed by it. Don't care. Okay. You can throw it away and you can start with something that is more apropos for where you're at. But that's how you demonstrate that experience or demonstrate that ability to execute on that mission.
Very well said, Michael. I appreciate it. With that said, it's coming up on just after 4:20 right now. I'd like to just thank everybody that's been able to come out and tune in today. And if you're catching this later as well, thanks. And please leave questions on either the YouTube or the LinkedIn comments, and we'll get to you and we'll answer them. And also, if you're a veteran watching this and you aren't a member of VetSec, please consider joining. There's a lot of military members there, and like everyone here that took their time out today, you can ask just about anybody in there a question and you'll get a response. With that said, any last words from everybody here, please, and then we'll call it a day.
Connect with us on LinkedIn. I think I speak for everybody. Find us on LinkedIn, connect with us. Well, I hope I speak for everybody. And happy to have, individual conversations if you want.
But when you connect to somebody, give them a message like, hey, I was on your panel, I was on your video, just because if you're a random off the street, I go, huh? What? Do I know you? So add a note, please.
Yeah, please that. And no vendors. No vendors.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks to Tom and thank you for everyone. This is why we do this. You got to give it away to keep it. So yeah, thanks.
All right. Thanks, everybody, and have a good day.